I think most of our thinking becomes focused on the acts of sin that are commissive, the things that we do, doing the wrong thing. And that is sin. Let's make no bones about it. But I think we fail to consider the acts of sin that are omissive, the not doing the right thing when we should do. That the Bible clearly paints a constant picture of its sin and God's displeasure and the result of those things. In fact, I would say some of the larger problems that we face in society are down to the omission of the people of God standing on the word of God rather than the commission of our sin. When good people who love Jesus and have his word keep their mouths closed, omission. Omission. There's plenty of those we can think through, but I'm not here to think them all through with you this morning. Both are true, so we can sin omissively and commissively, doing the wrong thing and not doing the right thing. Or doing nothing, because that's also a commissive act. We have to consider both. And for me, I think most Christians who love the Lord, who want to obey him, have this rather unchecked part of their mind in understanding the severity of omissive sin. But as you read the narrative of the Bible, it becomes very clear very quickly. The reason David got caught with Bathsheba, it tells us his first sin was omission. At the times when kings were meant to go to war, that's what he should have been doing, David's in Jerusalem. As a result, he falls into severe sexual sin. But the root problem was omission. He should have been on the battlefield. See how these two things work together? But I want us to take the reality of disobedience, commissive sin, omissive sin, cowardice. I don't want to see them for what they are, but I want us to understand by asking a question that might help us see sin in all its severity and all its depth and help us understand why we can't just morally do the right thing to get ourselves out of it. I want to ask the question, what does the heart of sin look like? What is it? Now, sin is, I think biblically, we can pull this together, any act, good or bad, so it could be obedience or disobedience, that you and I do because we do not in our hearts trust God, his word, his nature, and his character. For me, that's the heart of sin. The heart of sin is the things that we do, good and bad, that we do from a position where we do not fully trust God, his words, his nature, and his character. That becomes sin. Sin is an act of unbelief. It's the opposite of faith. The Bible tells in Romans, whatever is not of faith is sin. So the opposite of faith is unbelief. And unbelief says, I can't really trust you, God. And therefore, we're left with a decision in our hearts, and this is where sin begins to pile through. If we're not going to trust God, his words, his nature, his character, his sovereignty, we're going to have to choose to trust something else. We're going to have to choose to place something more supreme than God, his character, nature, and the words that he speaks. And I think, virtually without fail, we will come to the conclusion, we might not work it all through, that I'm going to trust myself to decide what I should do, when I should do it, how I should do it, or how I shouldn't do it. Unbelief. Rather than believe in God, what he said and his word and his authority and his nature and his character, we're going to trust ourselves. Rather than lifting our gaze to the beauty and the glory and the holiness and the greatness and the wisdom and the faithfulness and the truth and the supremacy and the majesty and the perfections of God, rather than do that, we curve our gaze in on ourselves, choosing in our minds and heart, and the Bible makes no difference there, but that's for our practical work this morning, in light of this thought, to act within view of our own new focus. And this act of not looking at him, but then looking inward, curving in ourselves, is an act laden, friends, with thought, with affections, with emotions. It's not just random, it happens because we choose to. And in it we say to ourselves, by doing so, we might not say these words, but this is what the action promotes, the unbelief. I'm choosing the opposite of what God said and who God is, because God could never satisfy the longings of my heart like I can satisfy them. And we, as Augustine defines sin, curve in on ourselves. Augustine says sin is man curved in on himself, looking at himself for truth and morality and salvation and hope. And what happens is we begin to curve in on ourselves, we become infatuated with our own reflection, our own musings, our own morality. I know what God says about what's right and wrong, but, you know, that was written back then, and I just think we're far more developed than they were back then. We just think differently, curving in on ourselves. Leading to the claim that my aim is just to be true to myself. What a lie.
Well, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We hope that this sermon has helped fuel your love for Christ. First and foremost, if you happen to live in the area, we would love to see you in person here at 27A Morley Road. If you live out of the area, our deepest desire for you is that you would engage with a local sound biblical church and get involved with the life of that church. Just a little bit more just about what we do here, just in Pokesdown. We have children's activities which happen both during the service and before the service. So if you are local and you have a child, please do join us from 10:15 as the children start their own journey with us on a Sunday. But whether you live near or far, if you feel led to donate into the life of the church, we would consider it a blessing. Please donate here.